Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Today's podcast is all about finding the balance between today's lifestyle and your financial future. The things that we're touching on today is creating a budget which sets you up for success, what is lifestyle creep and how can we avoid it, and the different ways to financially merge lives. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast, everyone. Welcome to Ben Nash, who is a financial advisor who founded Pivot Wealth to help people make smart money decisions and strike that balance between loving life now and setting up their ideal future. He believes that while money itself doesn't make you happy, it will give you the options and freedom to pursue things in life that will make you happy. Ben is also the author of Get Unstuck and host of the podcast How to Be Successful with Money. Taking action is the most powerful thing you can do when it comes to money, but first you need to know the rules of the game. As a self-confessed finance geek, Ben educates you about how to make the most out of your money. Ben runs a whole series of workshops that draw on practical experiences from working with hundreds of young professionals to provide simple and tried and tested money strategies that actually work, delivered in an easy to understand way. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I ran workshops until the
coronavirus
happened, and now I just run live online events.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, just workshops in a different shape.
That's it.
So Ben, how did you get interested in helping people with their money?
A bit randomly, really. When I went to high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I left. When I left high school, I just worked for a couple of years, and then randomly, my grandma just gave me this book that she had given to my cousin, and he wasn't interested in reading it. It was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which a lot of people have probably heard of.
One of the greats.
Yeah. So, that just really sparked my interest. And then I just started reading more and learning more and got more and more interested in it. And then, made the call that helping people with this stuff and working in that space was what I wanted to pursue, and went from there.
Yeah, so not only do you work with, obviously, money, but you specialize in kind of working with people who are, I guess, towards the beginning of setting up their structures, right?
Yeah, most of our clients are in their 30s and 40s primarily. We work with a whole bunch of different people, but they're normally sort of earlier on in their piece, people that have really good incomes, but not always like a huge pile of assets yet, although we work with a lot of people in the technology space as well that work for companies like, Apple and Google and Atlassian and those guys. There's a lot of employee share stuff that can create a bit of wealth, but typically they're people that don't have a lot of experience with financial advice, and they're not the ones that would fit the traditional mold of, the old money wanting to go see the suit and tie type of financial advisor.
Yeah, cool. So one of the reasons that we wanted to invite you onto the podcast to have a chat was kind of just to help both Nath and I, selfishly, but also our listeners kind of navigate that stage where you're just kind of figuring it out and getting your ducks in a row. Something that we're super aware of is that when couples are at the beginning of their relationship, and they're starting to talk about like the future and the future together, they get to go through and have some of those big conversations about what a happy life really looks like for them. And as we mentioned in your intro, that's something that you're really passionate about, is helping people figure out like, what is it that's going to make them happy? Are there some things that you can suggest to help get those kind of conversations started?
I think it's different for every person. So there's no, one size fits all approach when it comes to this stuff, but it is a really important conversation. And I think that there's a lot of statistics that show that finance can be a big source of stress in relationships, and it can actually lead to relationship breakdown. And I think that's why it's not always the best idea to rush out and, immediately, throw all of your finances together, because that can cause issues on its own. But it's generally worthwhile to be having that conversation. Once you know that a relationship, obviously it's not a first date type conversation, but having it sort of earlier on in the piece and can ensure that your values are aligned. Because if they're not, then it can mean that you're headed for trouble. So that it can be a diagnostic in that. But I would say that ultimately the keys to success with money as a couple is to be aligned on where you want to be headed and be comfortable to take the right sort of approach. If someone's just super reckless with their finances and someone else wants to be quite diligent, then that's going to create a challenge. If someone wants to just travel all the time and their real goal is that they're not interested in, like creating wealth or building assets, but more just they want to spend it all and the other person doesn't, then that can create challenges as well. So I think it's just really about, what are the things that are most important to you together as a relationship, and what are the commitments that you'll make to work towards what those goals are. I think one of the questions that we ask people when we're working with them on a sort of a one-on-one sense is to say that if we were, sitting around this table 3 years from today, what is important to us? What is it that we want to see? Where do you want to be? Where do you not want to be? And that can relate to all areas of life. But from a financial context, it's funny how much overlap that there is. That it could be that you're wanting to start a family, or it could be that you're wanting to be in a home, or that you're wanting to be able to have the freedom to take 12 months off work and travel the world. But those questions, it generally starts to, you get a good sense of the things that are really important.
Yeah. That's a great question that you popped in there. It was like, where do you want to be? Like, even just asking that, sitting down, having a glass of wine, or, beverage of choice, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 3 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? It can get pretty hard to fathom being, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, but just starting that conversation with where do you want to be is a great point to start.
I think that the where you want to be in 10 years is a very difficult question for most people to answer, but that's why 3 years, it's far enough away that you can change some stuff, you can make some actual serious progress towards some things, but it's close enough that you go, well, it's only just, it's only 3 years away. So it's not like that you're trying to picture yourself when you are 50. It makes it a little bit easier to answer.
Yeah, I think one of the difficulties that we have is that a lot of our influences come from our parents, I guess, and how they dealt with money and around what financial decisions they made in the past and what they think is a good investment as well, or what you should be doing with your money. So I guess how do people then step away from that and actually pave their own future and their
relationship with money?
Yeah, and relationship with money.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point that really there's so much of the way that we interact with money that's driven by our family and how our upbringing is in terms of money. But I think that the world is so different now to what it was in the 80s and 90s, that things are so complex. Also for young people, we're very aspirational, right? We want everything. We want it sort of as soon as possible. So it's it's not always easy to create that. I mean, you've got to put in some work to get there. So if our parents' ideas of financial success, which is, have your mortgage paid off and go down the South Coast for holidays every year, is generally not consistent with what we want to do. So that means that you need a different approach to get there. And while well-intentioned, it's often the case that, one, their version of success is different, but what worked then is not necessarily what worked now. There's that old set and forget money strategy of just plowing away the mortgage and then, figuring out what's next is a challenge when the average mortgage size is $1 million.
Yeah, especially in New South Wales.
Mm.
So before we kind of get to that stage of buying houses and talking about big scale money, obviously there's this beautiful start of a relationship where you're head over heels and you're out dating, and when you're connecting with one another, it is often out at dinner or you're out at events or going to festivals and things. And then, as the relationship sort of starts to mature and progress, dating doesn't always tend to stay looking like that. Have you got some advice or insights from, maybe yourself or previous clients around how to make that transition from, I guess, continuing to date and fuel up your relationship, but without spending all your cash?
Yeah, look, I think it can be expensive dating if you let it be, for sure. I know that I've been there personally, and I see this with my clients as well, the single ones, that it's easy to, you go down to the pub, have a couple of drinks and have a meal. And as well, because you're in that early stage, it's like there's I don't know, you call it societal pressure or, want to impress.
You want to impress, yeah.
Whatever that thing is, that means it's easy to, spend $200, $300, $400 on a night out. And that's a big chunk out of most people's discretionary budgets. It doesn't matter, if your income's 100,000 or 300,000, it's still a decent chunk of cash, right? So my tips would be to start cheap, like in terms of the things that you do, because once you set an expectation, then the expectation is set, and then you've got to sort of unwind that. And I know, like speaking from my personal experience, I know that when my now wife and I started dating like 7 years ago, we would go out a bit more, and it got to a point. We were probably like six or 12 months in, and I was like, we're just spending like heaps of money here. And really, there are other things that we wanted, like, because we both love to travel, and, we got on a few good holidays, and going, well, this is really, is it really the most important thing to us to be spending all this money on going to the pub or going out for dinner 3 or 4 nights a week, when, we'd rather go spend a couple of weeks in Asia or Europe or something. So I think that's it. And then one of the things that, again, me personally, I found really helpful was in that earlier stage that we didn't merge all of our finances together straight away, but we started putting some money into an account that we would use for the stuff that we did together. And then it's like, well, there's a pot of money that's there, and we say, well, that's our money to spend. We can spend it on whatever we want. We can blow it all on one really nice dinner if we want, or, it can be food for the house, or, typically a combination. But knowing that there was a finite number there, to say that if that went out, then there's a decision to be made to say, well, where does the money come? What do we do? Do we say
we're doing
no?
Netflix tonight?
Yeah, we say no to some stuff, we say no to some stuff, or we change the priorities, because really good money management, good financial planning, not financial planning with a financial planner, but good personal financial planning for anyone as an individual is really just good prioritization. It's just, you've got a certain amount of savings and assets and investments right now. You've got a certain amount of income coming in. So great financial planning is finding the perfect balance between the priorities, between, spending what you want to be spending now, on the day-to-day stuff, having the right, bills and rent, or, the Netflix and Spotify and all those sorts of things, having your travel fund, having your savings account bubbling away, paying down debts or your mortgage or whatever at the rate that you want. That the perfect balance between that sort of nirvana when it comes to your money. So what people fall into the trap of doing is what I call unconscious prioritization, where you just do stuff, and what you're doing is you're prioritizing things, but you're just doing them in the moment. And because we're all pleasure seekers, and we want that dopamine hit, that it's easy to go, oh yeah, I'll do that extra thing, or I'll buy that thing because it feels good. But really, when you prioritize that thing in the moment, you're deprioritizing something else. And if you're not doing it at a high level, you typically deprioritize things that actually have more value, like that big ticket, the holiday, that epic holiday to overseas. It's all those experiences that you guys like. I'm sure you appreciate, identify with that. Or your savings goals and creating, that financial freedom and security, all for like a super nice meal. Like, yeah, okay, but that stuff's great, but really, where does it sit on the priorities tree? So that's one easy way that you can have a conversation with your partner to say, well, okay, what are our priorities? Is it saving for that home deposit, or is it saving for that, making sure that we're doing these big holidays, or is it the day to day? And then ensuring that you got a process that's consistent to support that.
Yeah. So when couples make that decision to start merging lives and
opening joint bank accounts for fun.
Yeah. And they've got two very different incomes, like how do they, I guess, navigate that to find a win-win?
Look, I've seen a lot of different ways that people do it, and I don't think that there's any right way. I've had some clients that they will say, I earn twice as much as you, so therefore I'll get twice as much spending as you. Or I've seen it the other way, where one person earns less, but they need more money for spending. Or some people just split it down the middle. To me, as a planner, I don't care, but it doesn't really make a difference. But I think that, it really depends on the individual. It depends on what you want, and it depends on how you feel about that stuff. So I've seen some people that keep it separate for an extended period of time. With that, they might run separate savings accounts in parallel, but have their day-to-day stuff joint. That's okay. I think ultimately you've got to find the thing that works for you, that you're happy with, and there's no one right way, in my view. I think that the reality is, from a sort of a legal perspective, if that's a consideration, that, money ends up being joint anyway. And the way that I see it, it's like you may as well just throw it all in the pile and then figure out what you need to do with it. You agree if someone needs a bit more. I know now, Yang gets most of the money because she looks after the house and she's got Bub and she's doing the thing. So I don't care, But before that, before we had a kid, she would get less money because she was out less, and then I would just look after a bunch of stuff. So I think it just really, there's no one right way there, but you just have to be at a point that everybody's comfortable with. And
yeah, when Nathan and I first moved in together, we were actually housemates. So we'd spent a year living together as housemates, and we'd kind of, I guess, got up close and personal with how each other kind of had relationships with money, and like, how often do you grocery shop and how often you go out and how much money do you spend. And so we were in that unique spot where we already had a shared bank account before we were romantically involved. Pretty unique. I don't think I've ever met anyone else who's been in that situation.
Before that.
Yeah, but it meant that, a few years later when we made the move from Adelaide to Sydney, and everything was changing. My income was changing. Nate's income was changing. Our rent and lifestyle costs were drastically changing. And we had to be like, whoa, we've not had this experience before. It's time to like stop and prop and like figure this out.
Kind of reassess
and almost
everything.
Like hit zero and be like, okay, let's forget everything that we know about how much things cost and how much we make and, our cash flow. If someone's doing that for the first time or hitting a reset button, what is the best way to go about preparing a budget or a plan or a ebb and flow kind of statement?
Look, I think it's about first step, putting it all down on paper or on a spreadsheet. We do this with a Google Sheets version of a spreadsheet that I've sort of has evolved for us over a bunch of years. But it's broadly based on one from the Money Smart website. ASIC run the Money Smart website. Fantastic resource for people with money. I'm pretty sure they've still got a budget calculator on there. But listing everything out. So just saying, this is what some costs you'll know, some costs you won't know. And with the Money Smart one and with the budget planner that we use for our clients, that it doesn't really matter when it comes to your discretionary day-to-day stuff, how much you spend on coffees or lunches or eating out or going to the pub. It's just saying like, what we're trying to get to is a number to say that I've got $300 a week, and that's my money that I'm going to spend on all of my food and entertainment, and then working towards that number. So the discretionary part, you can take that approach, or you can try and list them out. That can be a good starting point. Your fixed costs are generally sort of a bit easier to predict because you know what they are. Your health insurance and your Netflix and your rent or mortgage or those sorts of things. So typically just a matter of listing it out on paper. Then you've got what you want to do. And I think what sometimes people get caught up thinking about, what does the last 12 months look like? And the last 12 months is sort of important insofar as you want to ensure that what your plan is realistic and achievable. But other than that, what's more important is what you want the next 12 months to look like rather than what's happened in the past. So think about that. Think about where you want how much you want to be spending on travel, how much you need to spend on whatever the things that are important to you. One suggestion I would make is including an allowance for unexpected expenses. This is things like you crash your car, smash your phone, you hurt yourself, need to get some, chiro or physio or something like that. Those sorts of things. But yeah, because unexpected things will always happen. We know that will happen, and that's distinctly different from an emergency fund. An emergency fund's important, but that's actually really bad things that you hope will never happen. Unexpected things we know will happen, but we don't know what they are. So listing everything out, what that allows you to do is when you plug your income in, you see what's left over. And most of the time, and I know that this happened for me when I did it the first time, that what's left over is negative. And then you go, oh, crap, okay, I'm going to have to circle back and reprioritize and say what is actually important for me here. So I think list it out, because you can't, unless you have clarity, there's no way that you can figure out that you even need to change anything.
So I think that is a good point, though, as well. Like, just to highlight that if it does come out negative, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just you need to actually go back and do the work and reprioritize what you're spending.
Yeah, that happens probably 95% of the time when we do it with clients.
So, Ben, if there's someone in a couple where you've got quite conflicting sort of like money personalities, not necessarily in the big vision or the big values, and that you're both sort of shooting towards the same thing, But I guess the process for getting there, and like someone wanting to be, get out the Excel spreadsheet every week and update it with exactly what was spent and in what category and for how much and all those sorts of things, versus someone who's a bit like, oh yeah, I know what the big goal is and I'm happy to have like a loose kind of figure. How do you find that alignment where it's not too much of one or the other?
Well, I think to keep everybody happy, I think that it's probably better if one person doesn't push their approach to things on the other necessarily, in terms of if you haven't. And I find that in most couples, there is one person that's more organized or more interested in money than the other. It's not a gendered thing. It can go either way. And I certainly look for those trends, but it's not one that I've noticed that it is more male or female dominated. But I think that, like if you've got someone that is less interested, trying to force them to track their expenses in a spreadsheet it's just going to lead to arguments, right? It's silly to do that. But if you want to track their expenses, well, I don't know, that could lead to a different set of arguments potentially. But if they don't care and you want to do it, then go for it. Just don't make them do it. But I think that you can have different approaches to things, but as long as you agree on what success is, like agree where you want to be headed, big picture, as you mentioned, but then break that down to say, okay, well, this is where we need to be in X period. And then ideally to agree on the framework to get there. So if you're going to run a bank account, like we use a banking, like an automatic banking system to make it easy to save and manage your money, let's agree on what that is collectively, and let's agree to work towards it. Now, if we keep deviating from what we've agreed, then we need to look at the results and say, well, how is that impacting things? Because if it's stopping you from doing the things that you've agreed that is the measurement of success, then there's a conversation that needs to happen. If two people could just go at it their own ways and you're still achieving success, well then great, that's fine. You're everything's working and no problem, and off you go.
Yeah, I think Nathan and I have had that experience a bit where it's like we've set a goal or an intended outcome, and then we've kind of gone about the process to doing it. And then what we've actually realized after the fact is like, oh, that actually wasn't the right goal. That goal wasn't actually important to us. And that's why we've both lost track or lost interest, or like, we've gone, when I really think about it, it is actually more important that I do this other thing, not the thing that we both agreed on.
Yes.
I guess in our situation, it was lucky that we'd both sort of come to that conclusion. It was like, oh yeah, that was the wrong goal. How often should we be like reviewing or like tracking progress against those bigger kind of goals?
Look, I think sort of around about monthly-ish is a good period of time. When we help people with their money stuff, we'll go, like, we set the goal and then we break it down on, this is where you need to be in 12 months. This is where you need to be every single month. And then that gets fed back to them so that every month you get a report and go on track, off track, exceeding. And then we can identify where that's come from. Now, that's super helpful because it allows you to quickly go, well, is everything okay? Or is there something that we need to address here? Or is there, whether it's an opportunity or an issue? But I think if you're going it alone, that having that, agreeing on, what that measure of success is, and then around that monthly time-ish, to then just acknowledge the progress, acknowledge what's going on, and then what's happened. And that allows you to course correct if you need to, or if you're exceeding where you've got, then you can, celebrate that and take your foot off the pedal a little bit, or pick up on the opportunity and push a bit harder and, build that momentum even more. But I think that around that monthly time to just talk about money stuff, keep everything else out of it, and then at least because that's what leads to confidence. If you don't talk about it, whether something's going good or something's going bad, if you haven't seen your progress, then you can't acknowledge that, and then you have that niggling thought to go, oh, there's something just not working, or should we be worried? Shouldn't we be worried? Are we doing enough? Are we doing too much? So I think that's a big step towards having that confidence and not having to stress about money.
Yeah, I think monthly works really well for us because I get paid monthly, so you're always comparing at the same time in the month, so you can actually see how you're tracking from month to month as well.
Yes. Yeah, I think I'd put it in the calendar and, have some fun with it, whether it's a breakfast or a lunch or a dinner or a glass of wine or whatever. and keeping it consistent. It is something, money is one of these things that it's really important, but it's never really urgent. So if you don't prioritize it, it's easy to just let it, slip away, and you get the emails come in and the other stuff happens. And then,
yeah, that's it. It's not urgent until you haven't dealt with it, is it?
That's right. Yeah.
So we've heard you speak about lifestyle creep. Can you just explain a little bit about what that is and why we should try and avoid it?
Sure. Yeah. So so lifestyle creep is that phenomenon where you start to earn more money, and you basically just spend more money, and you buy nicer things, and you have nicer holidays, and you eat nicer food, and you drive a nicer car, but you actually don't really get ahead. It's actually amazing how many people, and I'll speak to people that are making, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, which sounds like a massive amount of money, but they're saving less than some of my guys that are on, low six-figure incomes that we've been working with for a while that have really good habits. So, and it's so easy to do. And once you hire the dog walker and the personal trainer, and you have that fancy car, it's hard to go back. Like, no one wants to drive a Mazda after they've driven a BMW. And then there's a status thing, and all of that stuff can sort of come into it. So I think that all of those things are great things to have. Like, and for some people, even if you earn, and I don't take away from personal trainers, but sometimes even if you're on a low income, that can be the very most important thing to you, if it is. But let's make sure that when you're spending money on stuff, and especially those bigger ticket things, that they are really important to you, so that you're prioritizing the things that are important. But the key, the most effective strategy, and sometimes I get super excited when I'm doing these, financial plans and, debt recycling strategies and negative gearing and trusts and companies and all of this stuff. But the very most effective thing you can do is to spend less than you earn. So that's the first key, and that's what that lifestyle creep is all about. I think it's a very valuable one to avoid.
Yeah, I know that I've had some of those things where, like, even basic things like the shampoo that I use, it probably costs like 4 times as much as what the one I used to use costs, but there is no way I'm giving that up now. Like, there's absolutely no way. Like, will take priority. And there might be something else that if I needed to look at it, that'd be one of the last things to go, even though it might seem like a frivolous thing to someone else. Like, it's like, that's my hair. I show up with this on screen every day. For me, I need it to look and feel good, and that's how I do it. So I think that value piece of spend the money on the things that's actually giving you the reward that you need, and make sure that it's not just spending cash without that kickback.
That's it. Yeah, Yang gets this really expensive shampoo as well, which I used to sort of rag on her about. But then one day I started using the conditioner on my beard, and literally now I can't go.
Life changing.
Now I can't go back. Yeah, I'm like, well, you go and stay at a hotel, and I'm like, what is this? What is this stuff? So, it's all about priorities.
Hey, so we heard you sort of touch on there that it's about the habits that you develop around your money. What is one thing that we could do daily or weekly to improve our financial futures?
Oh, look, I think to my previous point on saying that the most impactful thing that you can do is to spend less than you earn. And I think that getting into good spending habits, like good money management habits, and I'm a big fan of, we've got this automated system that we use where we have, we've got one account for your bills that just get paid automatically. You've got one account for your spending, that's your walking around money, one or more. So it might be like Yang and I we've got one account each, and then we've got one joint account. Then there's an account for debt, one account for we call it lifestyle, but it's like your travel fund and any short-term savings to spend. And then your savings account is separate. Really having a good process there where we get the income coming into the top, filtering out right places, right money in the right places at the right time. It means that you never have to actually think about money other than what's in your everyday account. But it means that you do have to think about what's in your everyday account. Like I get like $300 a week still into my discretionary account, and I figured that that's a comfortable level for me to spend. Well, at the moment, no one's spending any money on anything other than panic buying. But before it would, I could buy my lunch. I like when I'm in the office at lunchtime, I'll get a sandwich from the cafe across the road. I deprioritize coffee, so I don't spend money on that. But I'd probably buy, maybe a couple of beers on the weekend and a bottle of wine on a Friday night or something. Give me a little bit left over for the occasional thing. But really, it doesn't matter what that number is for you, but picking that number and really working towards that. What I found, that's a huge way to make it easier to save. I used to be really bad at saving when I first came out of uni, and you're not earning that much money, but you can see that I don't know, you want all of that stuff, that it's easy to end up getting that balance sort of out of whack. So for me, I think that sticking to that save you a heap of time, also gives you a lot of confidence, and it's really the big driver of knowing that you just got this automatic saving system, that whether you're using that money to build your home deposit or crank a personal investment account or pay down debt or a mortgage or build your super or whatever, you know that you can do that, and you can do it with confidence. So it is a sort of a daily thing. You don't need to necessarily look at it every day, but knowing that you're working to that plan and just forcing yourself to either what doesn't matter if you start a plan and then you can't stick to the plan and need to change the plan, that's fine. Change the plan, but then work to the plan that you set, because that allows you to really make smart decisions when it does come time to make your money moves, but do it with a heap of confidence, knowing that it's not going, some weeks I spend this and some weeks I spend that, and I think I've got this, and I save all year. I've saved about $1,000 a month, so now I'm going to go get this massive mortgage, and then you go, holy crap, I don't have the money now, and there's this thing that's happened that I hadn't planned for, and it can lead to trouble. But in the meantime, it's leading to a lot of stress and frustration and just wasted time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Nathan and I have a similar bucket system to what you were mentioning. And when we made the shift to that sort of structure, it was just amazing how much you just didn't need to think. It was like, when's the phone bill? I don't know. When's because you've got it sitting there ticking away on autopilot. You know that the money's in the right bucket. You know that it's going to get direct debited and there will be money in that account because you planned for it. And it's just saved us so much time and energy and probably money in managing it correctly. So yeah, really great to hear that somebody else is running that system and we're not. We didn't just fluke it. Hey, Ben, so I know that you're a B1, G1 member as well. But as you may know, at Fuel Collective, one of our big values is to be the change. And that's about being the change in your own life, but also being the change that you want to see in the world. So to say thank you for being with us today, we're going to provide 9 days of business training to some women in Malawi, which will help them improve their financial literacy skills so that they can take better care of their businesses, their families, and their communities. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Awesome. That's great. There's a great project, that one. That's what we support, that one as well.
Yeah, I love it because it has such a great ripple effect too.
Absolutely. Yes.
So if our listeners have loved what we've been talking about today and want to connect with you, how's the best way to do that?
Yeah, well, as Sammy mentioned, I've just recently launched this podcast, How to Be Successful with Money, which is on all the podcast machine places. So check that out, or hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm reasonably active on there, so connect with me. Hit us up. There's a heap of tools and resources on the Pivot Wealth website, which is just www.pivotwealth.com.au.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Ben. It's been awesome.
Cool, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.